21, 22, 23. So both of these scopes, I now have 3 120mm scopes. I need to get rid of a few scopes, some of my older ones. This guy right here, this is a 120mm Achromat. Okay, and it's quite a bit lighter and smaller than this Sharpstar. This is also 120mm, but this is a triplet. This has 3 pieces of glass in it, where this has 2. And this is quite a bit shorter. You know, this is f4.3 with the focal reducer on it that I have. And this guy here, f5.6, quite a bit longer. And overall, it's just a beefier, more robust monster scope, I guess you could say. Now, I've had the SV Bony on my channel quite a bit, and a friend of mine's borrowing it right now. Hopefully I'll get it back maybe to kind of compare them side by side. But yeah, the SV Bony, it was lighter than this guy is, even though it's like kind of pretty much the exact same class of scope, same focal length about, a little bit different aperture. It's 122mm aperture, where this is 120. And there are some differences, but you know, in this video, guys, I'm gonna kind of go over some of my initial impressions, because I got 5 good nights in the first week that I had this guy, and it was a new moon too. So I definitely have some opinions that I've formed so far. So I am going to start with the one negative thing that I had with this scope. And this is actually a problem that I had with my other Sharpstar, my 61 EDPH. And that's that the dew shield on it, it doesn't extend very far. Now, it's about as long as other scopes, but if you look at the bell shape of this thing and the optical configuration of it, you know, the optic is actually larger than the actual tube down here. And so it expands a little bit inside this thing, and as a result, this dew shield can't extend very far. And because it doesn't extend very far, I've had actually quite a few problems with dew on this scope. And nothing to do with the design of the scope, just the length of the dew shield. And what I'll probably end up doing is, like I did with this guy here, I actually 3D printed an extension, and I also 3D printed an extension for my Sharpstar to, you know, basically kind of deal with the issue. Now, I know I probably could just use a dew strap, and I did actually put my dew strap on here and I started using it, but I found that I had to really amp the power up quite a bit. So if you're running off of batteries and stuff, you know, it's a little bit of a concern. You know, it's not really something I think that should sway you from maybe buying it or not. I know the Sharpstar is going to watch this video, so, you know, I'm giving them feedback. You know, could you make your dew shields a little bit longer? The SV Bony had a nice long dew shield on it, and I kind of really never needed to use a dew strap on it. The optic is actually up about right here where the A is, okay? It's halfway up the dew shield. And so, I mean, you could, I suppose, put the dew strap up here, but there is an air gap between, well, obviously the shade, because it slides back and forth, and the actual optics. So I chose to put it down here, and the heat kind of works its way up through the metal. That means, of course, that I did have to turn it up quite a bit. Now, typically, when I use a dew strap, I maybe use 10% power at most. I kind of had to beef it up, I think about 25% in order to keep dew under issues. And that was actually a pretty light night. On a heavier night, you might need to do 35%. So there you go. There's something for you to take into consideration when you're setting this thing up. So with the SV Bony, I kind of did a lot of comparing between the focuser that is on their lower end doublet type scopes versus the triplet 122. Now, basically somewhat similar focusers, only the cage that the entire focuser was in was much longer. Now, I haven't taken this apart yet, which I'm about to, and I'm going to show you, but look at the size of the focuser on this scope. It's just monstrous. And the machining looks great, and I'm a machinist, so I have a critical eye for this kind of stuff. And I gotta say, after using this thing for almost 2 weeks now, I haven't found a flaw anywhere, not a burr or scallop or anything. Now, like pretty much all scopes these days, this thing comes with an aluminum lens cap, okay, which has a felt ring around the inside of it that comes on and off. And one of the complaints that was lodged about the 61 EDPH was that this thing didn't really fit very well. It kind of came off too easy, and it was very easy to drop. In fact, mine is covered in dings because I've dropped it a lot. But, you know, it's nice to see that ASKAR, or Sharpstar, has kind of perfected this. Because this guy, I mean, it's got just the right amount of resistance. It's not too much, it's not too little. And I have pulled this thing off in, you know, about 60, 70 degree room temperature, and I've also pulled it off in single digits, and it all kind of works the same. So I think the felt that they have started using seems to be a little bit more temperature stable, and it's also not curling. As you can see, the inside of this one here, it's kind of curling back. This one, I haven't seen that happen yet, and I don't think it actually will. All right, all said and done, getting set up and everything, putting everything together, I think it's about 1 hour and 15 minutes, which, and for a lot of you, you're saying that's pretty quick. And I kind of want to share with you something. This is something I've been doing this for a long time, is I make wiring harnesses, right? And I've got a couple of different examples here from different scopes. And the beauty of having these wiring harnesses made, and although they took me a little bit of initial time to kind of create, they were worth it because I can rotate and swap out different scopes at different mounts very quickly. And that's possible because of these wiring harnesses that I've made. And a lot of them, even the wires, I actually, like this one right here, I took and snipped and then shortened it and then soldered it back together. Okay, so a lot of these cables are custom lengths. They're the exact lengths for my scope. Now this one here, you can see I've kind of got it wrapped around here a little few times because, you know, this, I don't know if I'm buying this scope yet. We'll see. I'm gonna save that information for the review. But yeah, if you haven't taken the time to create some wiring harnesses, I would encourage you to do it. It's really well worth it because, like I said, it took me 1 hour and 15 minutes to set this guy up. And that includes, like, the biggest thing was putting this on here. One of the kind of unique things about this thing is, I know it has a section right here which can be removed, and we're going to talk more about this in more detail in a second. But it also has a very large knurled ring right here, and I really actually like this little kind of addition. And I know, I'm sure Sharpstar wasn't thinking of it being used this way, but this gives me actually a really nice spot to take this thing and grab onto the scope and actually twist the entire assembly. Because when I do rotation, I don't like rotating the camera. Because if you rotate the camera, even if you're rotating the focal reducer or field flattener with it, it means you've got to redo your flats, okay? And why give yourself more work? I prefer to actually just rotate the entire scope inside the rings and then lock them back down like so. And I can get about 70 degrees one way and 70 degrees the other, which gives me about 140 degrees total, which is plenty. Okay, that focuser is really something. I am so impressed with a focuser this big. I think it's, man, it looks like it's close to 4 inches, but I think it's 3. Now, here's something else nice, is that there are degree markings right here, so that most of you, I know, are probably going to rotate the scope at this juncture right here. And that is certainly a nice feature. It does have 2 different shoes here on the focuser, which is kind of nice because, you know, obviously most people are going to be using this for astrophotography, and so the more connection points the better. We've got this big long rail, which I was actually tempted to put the air up here, but I didn't end up doing that. I put it in the back more for balance than anything else. This right here, so this section comes off, and it allows you to kind of shorten the entire assembly so that you can put a binocular adapter into here, you know, basically a prism that splits the single image into 2 so you can look at it with both of your eyes, which is very nice for visual stuff. I know looking at stuff with 2 eyes is way more comfortable than looking at it with 1. And you can do it longer, and you can kind of concentrate on it better because we're so used to looking at things with 2 eyes, you know. So yeah, it's nice that Sharpstar thought of the visual astronomy people, even though I know the majority of people are going to be buying this scope for astrophotography. So yeah, that's quite the focuser. Now, the inside of it, it actually has a rippled or a ring type texture on the inside of the focuser tube to basically reduce reflections. It is a nice matte finish on the inside and everything. And one of the reasons I took this apart is I kind of wanted to look at it, and I wanted to see, okay, so the supported section is about that thick because it's that deep. So that's how much is holding onto the focuser and keeping it from tilting essentially. And then, of course, we look on the bottom side. There are screws basically to kind of tension down on the entire focuser tube itself. You know, so that if it did come loose on you or something like that, you can adjust that in hindsight. Okay, and now. This is a rack and pinion type focuser, so it's got gears on it. These type of focusers do have a little bit of backlash. I gotta say, I couldn't feel any backlash, so it's pretty well put together. I know the SV Bonies that I have and all the ones that I've tried were really well done. So I guess the guys in China are just doing a really good job putting these focusers together these days. Now, I am, though, in my review video, I'm going to put a dial indicator on this thing and see just how much back focus there is, and I'll be able to measure it for you, and I'll give you like a really nice and exact number. So yeah, the reason I got this thing apart is I need to put my dual band narrow band filter in here tonight and get out underneath the stars. So for those of you wondering, okay, what kind of mount do you need for a scope like this? Even though this is a 120mm scope, you know, it's a pretty compact scope. It's not as big as I was kind of expecting. The SV Bony scope is quite a bit larger in a lot of respects. You know, it's only 2mm more of aperture. It's just, I don't know, there's more space around all the optics and so forth. Although this guy definitely is heavier. Now, I do have a counterweight on here. This is kind of overkill. It probably doesn't need it. And if you're wondering what kind of mount do you need, an AM3 should actually be able to handle this scope. So, you know, although that one you might actually need a counterweight. Now, the configuration that I have, as you can see, I have a 2600 MC Duo down there, and the first 5 nights I did all RGB testing, and those images, all images, I'm going to show in my final review where we'll actually go through the optics and so forth. This video is just kind of my initial impressions so far. And then I am using a ZWO focuser, and by the way, connecting the focuser was actually very easy. In fact, I think it even came with instructions in the manual showing you how to connect that actual focuser, which is great because this focuser is kind of everywhere. Everybody's using this focuser. The ASI Air that I'm using, that is the 3.3 version, the Plus with the 256 gigabytes of memory. And strangely enough, I actually lost one of my image sessions. I was shooting Orion, and for some reason I don't know, when I transferred them over, they corrupted the files, which was kind of weird, which is one of the reasons why I actually don't like using the internal memory on these things. I prefer to save my images right to a card, so that way I guess it eliminates that issue. But I am also using the beta version of the ZWO ASI Air software right now. I'm testing it for them, the new version. So, you know,